Ooh, welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge, you sick people who have your championship on week 18, making me work, but more so. Why do you do this to yourselves? The NFL has done a nice job of making a schedule where I believe most teams have something to play for. Will they all decide that they want to play for it? At what point in the game will they decide to pack it up and they'd rather keep their players healthy? You don't want a Bradley Chubb getting injured in a meaningless point in the game. Those type of decisions will be weighing on coaches' minds throughout the week and throughout the game. News for me, the Cleveland Browns aren't playing for anything. I ranked their guys fairly well, thinking that they were still playing for something, and I totally biffed on that as I was editing this. I realized it, and so actually, as I was getting done editing it, I finally realized it. So I don't have the bandana on. There will be part of your sign. I don't know exactly how I'll splice these in, but I have a couple of updates that will happen throughout the video in regards to Cleveland Browns players and maybe one person playing against them. Back to your regularly scheduled program. Projections I don't think are incredibly viable this week, so I did not do projections. We just got my rankings, looked at how the players have done on the season, looking at their opponents, and like I said, outside of San Francisco and Baltimore, I think it appears all teams have something to play with. Four. Maybe I've missed something. If I have, of course, I will alter the rankings throughout the week. You can find the rankings up at the website, www.theFFForge. If, once again, if something comes to light with the situations in games where I'm like, a little less comfortable with them. Also, I will go live 2 hours prior to kickoff on Saturday, and depending on what kind of turnout there is, I will go live Sunday morning as well. I suppose I'll probably go live almost no matter what, unless it's completely dead on Saturday night for like an hour, a minimum, prior to kickoff, just in case you wouldn't be able to make it there Saturday night. That could make sense. So we'll be there for start sit questions, as I am every week for you here in week 18. Also, maybe some of you are just doing like side bets one more week against friends, and you're here to check those rankings out. So let's get on to the rankings. Well, we should recap how I did last week, and I did not track that. Okay, so here are the fantasydata.com, by the way, great website. Oh, let me get this back to screen size. Great website for looking at fantasy points scored and whatnot and some stats. So, first thing that I said for DFS was to pay up a little bit more for Josh Allen. Or no, spend $8,200 on Josh Allen compared to like $8,300 for Jalen Hurts. And as you can see, Josh Allen did end up scoring better. What happened? Where are they? Right there. Then Jalen Hurts on the week, so that would have been worth it. Then for a mid-price at $7K, I said Brock Purdy. I'd say he probably didn't pay off for that. 17.6 fantasy points scored. Then in the bargain bin, I said, give me Derek Carr all day at $5,500. Did he finish top 12? It doesn't look like it. Well, yeah, they had a rougher day there. So, yeah, that didn't quite come through. He did okay. He did fine, but didn't quite have the bigger day that we were hoping for. I loved Jared Goff this week. How did he do? Yep, that didn't work out so well, huh? And then I said to fade Patrick Mahomes, and that worked out all right. Finished 24th. I did do better than my love of the week, but, what can you do? All right, let's get back on to the rankings here. All right, so here's my first tier. Over to the left, we have my EV rankings for all the players that I have ranked, so not including players who are, injured or not playing this week. And that is equalized value. It's much like average fantasy points scored per week. However, a little bit different, and it just favors consistency is the main point of it. So keep that in mind. Then over here, I did highlight in varying colors of green and red to orange to yellow how good of a matchup or poor of a matchup, green, of course, being good in both of these instances, and red different shadings of red to yellow being bad, poor matchups. So also keep that in mind over here. And I really only did them in like three groups. So very good matchup, above average matchup to below average, poor, bad kind of deal. So First tier here, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott. On the season, Dak hasn't quite performed up to these guys' level, but going up against Washington, really, really good matchup. They're playing for something this week, and I don't think that there's a chance that they'll be able to sit guys or whatever. So I think that they'll be playing hard and trying to win this game against Washington. So that's a good setup there. And then, Jalen Hurts just behind Josh Allen, although, actually you can see EV even says it like that. And then New York Giants, not necessarily the highest upside matchup for Jalen Hurts. So Josh Allen pulls in the lead and is the number one quarterback on the season, according to my EV rankings. Let's move on to the second tier of quarterbacks, which begins off at quarterback 4 with Jordan Love, followed by Kyler Murray, Justin Fields, 6, 7, and 8 via EV. Justin Fields going up against Green Bay's slightly tougher matchup, below average type of matchup. Patrick Mahomes himself in a good matchup against the Los Angeles Chargers, and he and CJ Stroud both kind of tied there for the 11th best quarterbacks on the season. And Jordan Love is going to be my love of the week this week. I do have him a little bit below the average expert at this point in the week, but I like the matchup, and he's just been playing very well and might get a couple of weapons back for this very important game. They're playing for everything. And Jordan Love, I think overall on this season has typically done, performed when the lights have been the brightest on him. So hopefully looking for that to continue. And Kyler Murray slipping up ahead of Justin Fields, surprisingly. And because of the matchup, I agreed with that. So, there you go. Let's move on to this next tier that I have shown you. My third tier goes from quarterback 9, Joe Flacco up here, which here's going to be the first update. I had Joe Flacco ranked 9th. We're going to push him back. He might not even be starting this week. So, there you go. We're just going to move on with the rest of the video. That's followed by my quarterback 10, Jared Goff, Matt Stafford, Geno Smith, Gardner Minshew, Tua Tagovailoa at 14, Derek Carr, Trevor Lawrence. So, Jared Goff going up against Minnesota, fine matchup there. Matt Stafford right behind them, going up against San Francisco. Main thing here that's helped me keep him up here and would give me some confidence in him, despite this being a poor matchup going up against San Francisco, is the fact that San Francisco will be sitting some of their starters. Not all of them, of course, but as many as they can, and of course, for the most part, the biggest names, most successful guys on both sides of the ball there. San Fran not really playing for anything, so I assume that is the route that they will go. And that should make things a little bit easier for Matt Stafford, who they are playing for the playoffs here. So everything on the line for them. And then we've got Geno Smith going up against Arizona. Really good matchup. He did have a decent week last week on the season. Not so great, but I expect him to go out there and, I think that they'll be playing hard against Arizona, which is, once again, a good matchup. Gardner Minshew also in a solid matchup here, going up against Houston, above average matchup. And just been slightly better than Geno Smith on the season, but I decided to lean into the better matchup for Geno. Tua, tougher matchup against Buffalo. They're playing for a lot. Miami just suffered several big injuries last week. They want to win a Super Bowl. I think they're playing for something here. So, and it's important. They want to win this game, but I think that the moment that this game is out of reach, if there is that moment, I think they start to sit guys. What's more important, getting the home field advantage or being healthy so you can actually beat teams in the playoffs? I don't know. Getting home field advantage I think is pretty important for them, but at the same time, you'd rather be at full health. So that Bradley Chubb thing might just scare them a little bit. And once again, tougher matchup through the air. If they're going to find success against Buffalo, it very well could be through the ground game. And then Derrick Henry just kind of sitting up here as a fine matchup. Trevor Lawrence going against Tennessee is a little bit of a tougher matchup. He's been quite banged up. They're all in the same tier. You can shuffle them up as you wish, personally. But that's the order that I ended up putting them in. And it could also change throughout the week here, right? Some of these guys. But there you go. Fade and Tua, loving Jordan Love. Let's get on to this final tier of, comfort to start guys. Tyrod Taylor up against the Philadelphia Eagles has been the best matchup for quarterbacks on the season at this point. So very good matchup for Tyrod Taylor. He's looked fine when he's had opportunities, and They're not going to be sitting him or anything like that. I'm sure they would love to play some spoiler to Philadelphia in the last week of the season here. Baker Mayfield, really, really tough matchup against Carolina as far as production goes for quarterbacks. They don't usually, put a lot of fantasy points up against Carolina. He's been the EV quarterback, 13 on the season, however, so hoping for the best here for Baker Mayfield. Nick Mullins going up against Detroit. It's a good matchup. He's kind of boom or bust, in my opinion. It's me again, editing Steve. Jake Browning was concerned about that Cleveland defense being at full strength. Not as concerned about that now, so I'm going to bet on Jake Browning to some extent. For now, moving him up to the top of this tier. And, we'll see how I feel about him throughout the week. Might be a candidate to be moved up a little bit more. Back to your regularly scheduled programming. Bit of hope there. And then that just brings us to the rest of them. So, let's move on to the tight end rankings now. All right, so time for the reveal of my first tier of tight ends. Oh, gosh. Little spoiler alert there at the bottom. But my first tier, top 4 tight ends of the week here. David Njoku, Travis Kelce, Trey McBride, Sam Laporta in this order for me. You can see on this. Yeah, you might have guessed it right off the bat here. David Njoku. Don't even know if he's going to be playing this week. Not too excited about the backup tight end there, but yeah, David Njoku not going to be my tight end 1 for this week. Once again, might not even be starting for Cleveland. Back to your regularly scheduled programming. It's out to Travis Kelce, EV tight end 3 on the season now. Been falling. Gonna keep him in the second rank here, though. Going against the Los Angeles Chargers, it is a pretty good tight end matchup. Trey McBride going against Seattle. Solid. Just been on a little bit of a downturn as of late. Still been obviously very good on the season while he's been the starter. After post-Zach Ertz time period. And then Sam Laporta just got him ranked where he has been on the season. Very, very solid. Going up against Minnesota. I don't think that's a good or bad tight end matchup. Let's move on to this second tier. But obviously, in case I didn't say it there, I love David Njoku this week. Then, and that might be a bit of a cop-out, but, it's David Njoku. He hasn't been ranked that high once this season. So, starting him over everybody, in my opinion. Then we've got Jacob Ferguson in here to start my second tier, followed by Isaiah Likely, Tucker Kraft, Evan Ingram, Dallas Goedert. So for Isaiah Likely, yes, they're going to be sitting their starters. 2 things. I don't think Isaiah Likely makes that sit list. He's young enough, has not enough experience that I think they would rather get him more experience in a game. He is going to have Tyler Huntley, right? Did I get that name right? Pro Bowl quarterback in as the backup quarterback for Baltimore, and I believe we have seen a connection between him and Isaiah Likely in the past in at least one game that they both would have been playing last season, and they're expecting Mark Andrews. I believe, at least there's the potential that he could be back here in the playoffs anyways, so I think Isaiah Likely is going to get in there, and I think that without some of those other wide receiver options, or maybe not playing all game for some of the other guys, it could be another great scenario, and as you see, in his small sample set, without Mark Andrews, he has been the number 1 tight end on the season via EV. Very, very consistently been very good. I got him wrong when it came to the waiver wire and time to pick him up originally. Then we've got Tucker Kraft, EV, tight end 5 in his short, small sample size as the starter. In the event that Luke Musgrave comes back, this would change. I think Luke Musgrave's still the number 1 tight end on the field. Regardless, would have much less confidence in Tucker Kraft. But until that happens, this is where I'm going to be ranking him. I like it. And I put him up ahead of Evan Ingram, even though Ingram's been absolutely fantastic. And normally I would trust Ingram over Tucker Kraft. He's going up against Tennessee. It's a very bad matchup for tight ends. So not too excited about that. And so he is... he's my second fade kind of technically, but my first fade might not even play, but he's still being ranked quite highly. So I just wanted to make sure to point out the original fade, but it's kind of like David Njoku, where it feels like a bit of a cop-out. So that's why we got Evan Ingram up here. Then Dallas Goedert to finish this tier up. He's been a little bit boom, bust, but looking like they're not going to have Devonta Smith this week, so that could go a long ways towards helping Dallas Goedert to have a big week against the New York Giants. Not too afraid of that matchup. And yeah, that's how that tier ends. And we got a nice little tier here. Darren Waller, Dalton Schultz, Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet would be much higher if he didn't have a stinker last week. He was a last-minute, healthy, not scratch for the game. It was kind of looking like he wasn't going to play, but he did, and he didn't do anything in the game. In fact, I think he was very limited snap share wise too. So expecting that if he comes back, he'll be much better this week, and he's been good enough on the season that I think it's tough to overlook him compared to the rest of the options, which is why he makes it into this tier. But obviously, behind Waller and Schultz, who's been better than on the season. Let's move on to this next tier of tight ends. Going from tight end 13 down to 19, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, Gerald Everett in a below average matchup. Otherwise, I would have had him up ahead of Kyle Pitts. You can see very close to one another on the season via EV. Juwan Johnson been on an absolute tear as of late, just like he did late last season. So going up against Atlanta, I'm not too afraid of that. And the reason that I have him ranked ahead of Taysom Hill this week is that Atlanta is quite good against the run. So I do believe that this favors Juwan Johnson out of the two tight ends there. Then we've got Chigo Okonkwo here going against Jacksonville. Fine matchup, whatever. You're taking a shot on somebody. I'll take a shot on him because I am down on Taysom Hill this week. And then Logan Thomas here going up against Dallas. I believe not a fantastic tight end matchup, though not really out of the average territory. So that is the way that I rank them. Let's move on to this last tier before we get into guys that there's zero chance I'd ever start. And that begins with George Kittle, just because I don't really think that he'll be starting this week. It's a fantastic matchup. Wish we could trust him. So even if he does start, I'm still not going to have him ranked incredibly highly. We'll see how things break down there for San Francisco, what their decisions are, but they're not playing for anything. So I would think that they'll be resting their guys. And unfortunately, can't take advantage of that this week if George Kittle helped you make it here. Jonnu Smith, Pat Freiermuth, Tyler Higbee, Kylen Granson, all to wrap this tier up. Kylen Granson in a decent matchup there. And other guys that I'll just take a shot on because this is about where they deserve to be ranked. Conklin, not the same tight end that he had earlier in the season. Quarterback, that he had earlier in the season to justify how he's done on the season as a tight end 18. Also, doesn't really, even in that situation, never really provided you with much upside, just been consistency, mediocre. So, really, really tough matchup on top of that. Not really going to touch him. Cade Otton, below average matchup against Carolina. Not too excited about that. Noah Fant, actually, I had a love tag on it yesterday when I originally went through these. I'm not 100% sure why, but I like Noah Fant this week going up against Arizona. Could be a part of that. And yeah, there we go. Looking for, if Michael Mayer were to be starting this week, we'll get a little bit excited about that. So that's always somebody you could pick up if you wanted. But of course, it will be the concern about him coming back from injury, depending on how he practices this week. Hunter Henry, gets right into this group of guys, and Luke Musgrave would. I think I would feel comfortable enough with Luke Musgrave to put him ahead of Kyle Pitts and maybe Dalton Kincaid, even right in that territory. Even Cole Kmet, you might be starting to think of which one do you want to play there. So probably go with Cole Kmet though. Week past, the second week back from injury. So there we go. That is all the quarterbacks and the tight ends. Thank you very, very much for tuning on through, being here throughout the entirety of the season. Hope you stick around in the off season. I will be going to the NFL draft, and then I'll be recapping this season a little bit. NFL draft, recapping that, and moving on to fantasy football yet again for the coming year. So I'll be here. Thank you very much. Peace out.